What's up, everybody? Troy Cartwright here. Welcome back to another episode of 10-Year Town. We have got a Q&A episode coming up soon, so make sure you've got your questions submitted at 10yeartown.com. Also, we've got some events that are starting to take shape, and we'd love to keep in touch with you about those. So join the 10-Year Town community also at 10yeartown.com. Thanks. Today's guest is Luke Laird. Luke has over 20 number ones as a songwriter. He also has a bunch of amazing producer credits, including Kacey Musgraves, Toby Keith, Rascal Flatts, Tim McGraw, and many, many others. Luke is a really fascinating guy. I learned so much talking with him in this episode. I know you will too. So without further ado, here he is, Luke Laird. Thank you for being here.
Man, thanks for having me.
How you doing today?
I'm good.
Yeah? Did you do anything exciting?
I wrote a song.
Hey.
It was pretty exciting.
That's a pretty good day.
Got done just in time to get over here.
Oh, dude. Well, thank you. Thanks for being here. So I always start this thing off with the same question, which is, how long have you been in town?
Yeah, I knew you were going to ask me that. So I used my calculator. That's how long it's been on my phone.
Yeah.
But 26 years.
Wow.
If you count, which I guess, I moved from Pennsylvania, came to MTSU in 1997.
Okay.
I count those years because
I
was playing writers' nights and
yeah, you were doing
with publishers.
The thing. Yeah. Where in Pennsylvania?
It's northwestern Pennsylvania. There's a couple different towns, but they're close to each other. One's called Conneaut Lake, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Which is a lot of Iroquois Indians from that area.
Okay.
And then a bigger town, which is called Grove City, Pennsylvania. And that's where I graduated from high school.
Okay.
Yeah.
You said
Western.
Okay. Like how close to that? So I worked a couple summers in Hershey.
Okay. It's a few hours away.
And that was, but like I'd go up to Connecticut and I would go through like Scranton and Allentown.
Other side of the state. So
okay.
Like I'm closer to like about an hour and a half north of Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Very cool.
Same distance from east of Cleveland, Ohio.
Okay.
So,
I see.
Yeah.
Gotcha. How did you, like you went to MTSU, but like how did you know about it?
Yeah. So I found out about MTSU. My mom actually found out. I told my parents I wanted to be a songwriter and instead of crushing my dream, they really wanted me to go to college, which I wanted to go to school too. I mean, I'm also very realistic and didn't just think, I'm going to move to Nashville and be a songwriter. But even though that's what I wanted to do, my mom from a friend found out about that they had a music business program. So we were down here on a summer vacation when I was in high school and we visited the campus and I said, yeah, this works. It was cheaper than Belmont. And, I saw the studios and I just thought this is close enough to Nashville for me.
Yeah,
this is the only school I applied to. And my ACT scores weren't even high enough to get into MTSU, but fortunately they looked at my SAT scores. That's what I was told. I don't know. I can't imagine they were that great either, but they're like, yeah, we'll take you. Yeah.
They were like, this is good enough.
Yeah.
Wow. So you came, I guess you were like 18 years old and
I moved here. I guess I would have been 19.
Okay.
And it was awesome. I was so excited to be, in Nashville or near Nashville.
Wow. I guess obviously you were already writing songs. So how old were you when you wrote your first song, you think?
Honestly, I learned piano like when I was in kindergarten and then picked up the guitar in first grade.
Oh, wow.
And once I could put two chords together, I just started writing.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if they would be considered full songs back then, but just pretty much, I guess, just choruses now looking back on it and just make stuff up all the time.
But isn't that crazy that it's like, I had a very similar...
Really?
I have like this memory of like writing a song. And this was like our first house that we moved out of when I was 11.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember writing a song in the notebook. You know, I think it was like on top of like a BB Mac song.
Yeah.
But I was like,
that's all right.
You know, but nobody told me to do that.
Yeah, it's not.
But it was in me, and it needed to come out.
Yeah, and there's something, I don't know, so gratifying when you put some words and music together, and then I just remember being excited to, you know, show it to my parents or whatever.
Yeah.
Play it for my family.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always loved music. You talking about maybe writing on top of something else. I used to, in high school, of course, this is pre-internet. The internet came out when I was in high school, but, you know, it was very slow back then. So if I wanted to learn a cover song, I would have my boombox and I would just hit play, you know, listen to 2 lines, pause, write it down in my notebook. And I think that really, looking back on it, taught me about song structure.
Oh, wow.
Oh, okay, here they keep coming back to this. This is the chorus.
Yeah.
I mean, I did that for hundreds of songs.
Really?
Yeah. I was so excited that I'd just write down what the chords were.
So you were like kind of charting it, but...
Yeah, I was just over in like the margins. I would say, oh, okay, that's a G, or that's the capo's on 2 and I'm playing in G position or whatever. And I would just write the chords over there. Like I kind of knew where they went in the song, but yeah, it was good training, I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's that ear training.
Yeah.
It matters somehow. I don't know how, but
yeah, it did. We all did it.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're at MTSU, are you like pretty immediately doing rounds and all that stuff? Like,
well, yeah, I tried to get involved any way I could with the writing of songs and performing or whatever. And they would do some like open mic type things in Murfreesboro and just on campus. And so, I would sign up for all that stuff. And I didn't have a car, so I couldn't get to Nashville. So I was really stuck in Murfreesboro, which was fine. I finally got a car my junior year, I believe. But they had a organization called the Student Songwriting Association.
Okay.
Which association? It sounds very official, but and the president of it, the first year I was in it, was a guy named BJ Hill.
Oh yeah.
So might know BJ.
Absolutely.
And I wasn't co-writing at all, but our meetings would consist of us just playing our songs for each other, and that was pretty much it, I think. And then when he graduated, he said, "Man, I think you should be the next president of the Student Songwriters Association." I was like, "Man, I don't think so. You know, it sounds like a lot of responsibility." And like, no. So I did, but I met some neat people in that. Dave Barnes, a guy named Brandon Heath, who's a Christian artist who's really good. So it was cool, yeah, and just probably like you, just being around a bunch of songwriters. It's inspiring, and
it's very inspiring.
Was really cool,
and especially when for a lot of us, I think, like when you're growing up, you're on an island.
Oh yeah. So all of a sudden, there's people like you.
It's like, oh my, I mean that
very cool.
I was 26 when I moved to Nashville. So I had not really found that, and then when I discovered what it was like, what? This is a real place.
All these people,
all these people that like care about this thing as much as I do.
Yeah, no, it's really cool, and it can also be intimidating, but it's like you want to be where the action is. So
that's where the whatever it is, the youthful swagger that you have, is so helpful. It's like I was too full of myself to be intimidated. Almost.
Like, I'm really good.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. So how did that sort of like, what was the process from getting, I guess you graduated from MTSU and then I guess eventually you got like your first deal somewhere.
Yeah.
How long was that? And how did that work?
Well, it's interesting. So there's a guy who's from my hometown named Bill Luther, who's a songwriter.
Yeah.
And I didn't know Bill growing up, but he was just enough older than me that we never crossed paths. But my parents knew him and his family. And of course, when I was down here, they were always like, you should try to reach out to Bill Luther. I'm like, I'm not going to bug this guy. I mean, I knew who he was.
Yeah.
At this point, he had quite a few hits, Kenny Chesney, Tim McGraw, different things. But my parents were in town one weekend, and they had got in touch with Bill, and he goes, you guys should come over to our house. They're, grilling out or something. Said, have Luke bring his guitar. So I took it. And he's like, play me something. I was super nervous, but I played him something I wrote.
Yeah.
And he was very encouraging. And he was like, man, he goes, I think you could get a draw somewhere. And I didn't know what the word draw even meant, but like basically get a publishing deal. And I was like, really? And no one had ever told me that, who was from the business.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I just went home that night on cloud 9, and he was like, I'm going to introduce you to somebody at my publishing company. And I was like, okay. So he introduced me to Chris Oglesby.
Oh, wow.
I got a meeting. I was a junior in college, got a meeting with Chris, and he said, just come and play me some stuff. So I printed my lyrics out and took them in there. First time I set foot in a real publishing company in Nashville, and I just remember seeing like the gold records on the wall and like, wow, this is crazy. People writing songs in the rooms. And I played him a few things, and I'm sure they weren't very good at all, but he was very encouraging. He's like, man, I really like what you do. When you write some new stuff, just call me up and come in and play me some more stuff. So I was very excited. He wasn't like, hey, we want to offer you a deal. But he gave me that, Chris is so great, especially with young writers, at finding that one or two little things they do that makes them unique. And he'll kind of point that out. And he's good at critiquing songs too. Like, hey, I think maybe like the second verse, you kind of just bailed out on it, which I've done a lot. Like I still do it. I'm always like, well, if they get to the end of the chorus and they don't want to cut it, the second verse they're not going to all of a sudden, I don't like it, but that second verse.
The second verse has never changed anyone's mind.
Yeah. But Chris was very encouraging, and he actually introduced me to a handful of other publishers. So all of a sudden I started getting publishing meetings, and I met with Rusty Gaston, who at the time was at Songwriting, Carla Wallace, Big Yellow Dog. Troy Tomlinson at the time was at Acuff Rose Music before they got bought by Sony. So great publishers in town that had an open door, and I would go play them stuff, and they were all wonderful and encouraging. But Scott Gunner too Scott was awesome. He was at a company called Elmo Irving that ended up getting bought by Universal. But he said, well, man, do you have any of your stuff on a tape or a CD that, I can? I was like, man, I don't really have. The only recording access I had at that point was a 4-track cassette recorder at my dorm room. And that did not sound good. He said, why don't you can come up one weekend and use the studio, and I have an engineer, and if you just sit in there and played like 10 songs. So I just sat in there. They set up 2 mics. I recorded like 10 songs I'd written by myself, and but then I had something on a CD so I could hand out. Yeah. So I'll never forget that. He was very encouraging. Wow. But again, that all happened probably in my junior year. So I get to the end of I'm hoping maybe I'll get a pub deal by the time I get out of school, so I got a job, Yeah. And that just never happened. No one pulled the trigger, and I ended up taking a job with Brooks and Dunn, working on the road just as an assistant for their tour manager. Okay. So it was a great job because I didn't know anything about the road, but I learned a lot really quickly, and those guys were great to work for. I told them when I took the job that I was, really trying to be a songwriter, but and they were supportive of that. And we would be on the road typically like a Thursday through Sunday or something like that, how tours work. And when we would get home on late Sunday or early Monday morning, on Monday nights, at this point I was still living in Murfreesboro, but I had a car. It was a 1989 Chevy Celebrity,
pretty sick.
Google it. Dave Barnes in college said, "Oh, the celebrity." He goes, the only car they don't drive," which I never forgot that. But I would drive up here Monday night. Every Monday, I'd play at a place called the Broken Spoke, and it was cool because it was a good writers' night. Lots of new writers, and then later in the evening, like the hit writers would play, and so. At that time, it was guys like Tony Lane and Chris Wallen, and Tony was just, he's so good. And I had a little, it looked like a Walkman, it was a little cassette recorder, and I'd basically bootleg his sets because I'm like, this guy's songs are amazing. I could listen to them in my dorm room.
Yeah.
And so I did that, while I was working for them. And finally, in the fall of 2002. So I graduated in December of 2001.
Okay.
So probably about fall 2002, Chris offered me my first publishing deal. The first publisher I met with, Chris Oglesby, ends up being the guy who offers me a deal. Wow. And, it was just so exciting. As a songwriter, like a big moment,
Yeah, of course.
And so, that was my first publisher. And, in a way, they were really my only publisher until Beth and I started Creative Nation because Universal ended up buying them, and I was in that system for, I think, 10 years or close to it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Pretty wild.
Yeah.
But very exciting times. And when I signed at BMG, they had a lot of great writers, Amy Mayo, Chris Lindsay, Hugh Prestwood, and then Craig Wiseman was just knocking it out of the park then. It was right before he left to start Big Loud.
Okay.
And those guys were all very encouraging. One quick funny story, we used to do a lot of guitar pulls, and our publishers would get with another publishing company, especially for new writers, I think, to meet and everything.
Yeah.
And so we did a BMG Seagale guitar pull over at BMG, and lots of new writers, and just to meet. And I remember playing my song, probably like you said, I was very confident in this song that was not, I had no reason to be confident. But then they're like, okay, one of our new writers is going to play. And he started playing and singing, and I was like, this guy, if this is what new writers are like, I'm way out of my league. And it was Chris Stapleton. And I realized not long after that, he's an anomaly. That dude I was just like, holy cow, this guy. But
that'll that's a tough voice to follow.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It was amazing. But Chris and I met through that and started writing and stuff. But it was good times, and all the veteran writers were very kind, and Craig Wiseman was always encouraging to me, and just grateful to have that experience, as a brand new songwriter.
Absolutely, man. Yeah,
and I hadn't co-written either. I think I co-wrote 2 songs before I signed a publishing deal. So then getting thrown into the 5 days a week, it was like a big learning curve.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally different. I don't know. Like I was saying, I wrote by myself for years, and then when you start co-writing, you're like, all right, this is kind of a different, it's a little bit of a different skill set, but I think it's so important to know how to write by yourself.
Oh yeah, that's how I still get most of my ideas. I have to be sitting there by myself with the guitar. But I do think it's important to do, and then I think it can make you a better co-writer.
Yeah. So are you like doing, how does some of this production stuff sort of like that you do like fold into this thing? Oh,
like doing tracks or whatever?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So that's funny how that, I was never really a studio person or knew how to make beats or tracks, but probably about 5 years into my publishing deal, I would do the typical write songs, write them in my notebook, record them on a cassette, work tapes, and then we'd hire the band and go in and do demos, and, which is awesome. I mean, the players but I remember, getting some of these demos back, and I was always just kind of let down because it wasn't how I heard it in my head, but I wasn't the best communicator, knowing all the lingo, like, no, I hear it more like this. And so I got my first Apple laptop, probably like, I don't know, 2006, 7, something like that.
Yeah.
And I had the free GarageBand on there. It's like, oh, let me mess with this a little bit. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, okay. I think a lot of what I'm not getting right in the studio is the feel or the groove. And I can just program that in here. And all of a sudden these little GarageBand demos I was doing were more compelling than the actual. And it just kind of, things, I mean, I feel like I've started writing better songs, but also I feel like my demos kind of stood out more, not because they sounded more professional, but they, you know, I took time to put like actual, you know, hooks in there, musical hooks.
Yeah.
And so I jumped from GarageBand to Logic, and I just started doing tracks, you know, just for fun. I still do demo sessions, but a lot of times I'll bring tracks in. But I learned a lot about just the production of a song through sitting there working by myself.
Well, yeah, you getting your hands dirty.
Oh, what I'm like, oh, okay. This, what I hear more is like 16th notes, and you know, I didn't know how to say all that because didn't know how to talk in musical language, what that was. But I'm like, I can play it like this. I'm not a great bass player, but I can get a pick and figure a part out.
Yeah.
So that kind of, my first few cuts, I didn't do tracks or anything like that, but then several after, probably the first big one of just a basic track I did, demo. I mean, we built it in the room, was a song I wrote with Red Akins, Take a Back Road.
Yeah.
And it was very raw, but it had like a defined feel to it, a defined guitar riff.
Did it have that riff?
Yeah.
Like that it, what?
Yeah. And then a background part, which I learned, they listen to even the, like if you can come up with a hooky background vocal for demos, that can be good. Like, so we did on American Kids, like making it, doing all the, oh, like those things. You realize, they like hearing that too. So it wasn't just, it was like, yes, writing the song, the lyric and everything, but then if you add a couple of these other little things that, because really as a songwriter, when an artist is listening to a handful of songs, you're just trying to get their attention. So it doesn't even have to sound perfect, but just something what's going to sound different than, you know, the time a CD with 10 other songs on it.
Yeah.
And so that's what I was always thinking. How can I get somebody's attention?
Yeah. I guess looking back, right, it's easier to connect the dots, but like, it sounds like once you sort of figured out your spin on it, right, your differentiation, doing like, okay, I'm going to make these tracks, I guess. I don't know if they called it that at the time. I don't know. But like that sort of, do you feel like that was sort of the moment where like I don't know, it opened up more a little bit just in terms of the success you started having? And I
think so, because I also think as writers, you know, we should, ideally we're ahead of the curve because we're the creation of the song. So it would free me. Doing demos is like the most creative thing I get to do, because I don't have to necessarily think, will they play this on the radio? Well, it doesn't matter because my demo's not getting played on the radio. And but if it gets somebody's attention enough to want to record it, that's the idea. So I think, you know, I learned too, a lot of the songs of mine that got recorded were, I think, because they kind of felt good. And so when I would write in a room, a lot of songs I would start like with a beatbox, and then me doing tracks, that feel would kind of all get lost. So I learned, if I do a track with and I can layer that in there, and then I can even program almost that kind of thing. Immediately the feel is exactly how I want it.
Yeah.
It doesn't get lost in the translation of trying to tell a musician to do, like, just put it on there, which is funny because I've had like, I don't know, at least 4 or 5 I can think of that my beatbox track made it all the way through onto the radio. A lot of people might not hear it unless you really listen for it, but I was like, okay, maybe, because I would think, well, if I do that, then they might not think it's country, but I'm like, it's like some of the countryest stuff I've written. It's just, you're just trying to get a feel.
It's the emotion. That's the whole thing anyway.
And it's the same thing with writing lyrics. You're trying to keep that emotion. And once you start trying to, surgically make things exactly right, you can tend to lose that. You can have two amazing lines next to each other, but sometimes they cancel each other out.
That's true. Yeah. And I think we've all, as songwriters, felt the pain of I've seen it at Seagull on the wall. It's like a meme. It's like my demo. It's like perfect.
Yeah.
And then it's like first the cut, and it's like, all messed up or something.
Yeah, it's weird. Fortunately, I haven't heard too many. I think when you get a song cut, I may have heard a few things. I'm like, I don't know if I would have, but then if it makes it to the radio, I'm like, I really do kind of like this. Yeah.
Sounds pretty great.
That's pretty good, actually.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. What was your first, was Take It Back, or was that your first number one, or?
No, my first number one was a song called So Small, recorded by Carrie Underwood.
Yeah.
The way that happened was, and I wrote it with Carrie and Hillary Lindsay.
Okay.
And Hillary and I had just written, she was one of my earliest co-writers after getting a publishing deal. We wrote so many songs, the two of us together, as well as different three-ways and things. And Hillary's always been great, but that first Carrie Underwood record, for real, really put her on the map, because Carrie cut a bunch of her songs, wrote Jesus Take the Wheel. So Carrie was coming into her second album, and she was wanting to do more writing. And Hillary called me and was like, hey, I think me, you, and Carrie Underwood should write. And I was like, yeah, that'd be amazing. Carrie had just sold like 6 million records. I'd rarely got opportunities with a big artist like that.
Yeah.
But also, the same guy who signed me my first pub deal at the time, he wasn't at the publishing company anymore, but he was helping Carrie and her team find songs. He helped her before the first record. And then, so really having him along with Hillary, like saying, hey, you should write with Luke. I think I had 2 cuts.
Yeah.
So we wrote 2 days back to back. First day we wrote So Small. The second day we wrote another single off that record called Last Name. Wow. And so that was my introduction. And I'll never forget, to having something on the radio. Yeah. I'll never forget Chris calling me and saying, well, first I remember Carrie Underwood's going to cut this. Like, wow. And then when they said, you got her first single off her second record, I was just like, this is unreal. Wow. And it was, my first, Carrie was my first 2 number ones, and my third one was a Blake Shelton song called Hillbilly Bone that I wrote with Craig Wiseman.
Of course, yeah.
And Craig's like, I thought maybe you only wrote girl songs. Like, no.
Yep. Oh my God.
So,
what did that feel like? Did the first one, like, were you having any moments of doubt along the way beforehand?
Oh yeah. Always,
Yeah.
You feel like, hey, this is what I'm meant to be doing. It feels natural. Like, writing songs is my passion. But you're always like, getting a publishing deal is a big deal, because that's like somebody saying, we're literally willing to pay you, even if it's not a lot of money, to write songs. And I still wake up like, I can't believe I get to write songs for a living.
Yeah.
But then it's the whole, well, am I ever going to get a cut? I got my first cut 3 years into my first publishing deal. And then it's like, well, will I ever have a song on the radio? So then 2 years after that first cut, I had my first hit. Yeah. And it's a really cool feeling. And people say, well, after you had that, did you feel like, well, now I got to do it again? I never really had that feeling. I was just so grateful. I'm like, I can't believe this happened. And I felt like the songs I was writing good enough to be cuts.
Yeah.
But it just takes time, and I was willing to put the work in. I really enjoy writing songs, and it can be so tough sometimes as a writer because you don't have control over, or I don't have control over what gets picked to be the single or cut or whatever. I mean, you may put your 2 cents in, but like the only control you have is in the room as far as like how can we make this just awesome, like just try to make this a great song. And I was just, and once you have a hit, you do get some more opportunities as far as like they trust you, like, okay, maybe Carrie Underwood will write with me again. And that happened, and some other writers, that maybe I wanted to write with finally would write with me. And I don't know, man, but I remember hearing it for the first time on the radio, and I was driving to a co-write in my truck, and it came on, and I was just like, this is crazy. Like, it's just so surreal.
Yeah,
it really is. And one of the most surreal things hearing your song on a radio is when you go back to your hometown and then you hear it play on like the station you listened to growing up. It's just like, wow.
Yeah.
Really cool.
Does it ever get old?
No, it doesn't. So many of my songs I can remember like exactly where I was when I heard.
Yeah. Heard it for the first time.
I know I'm kind of going off on tangent, but
that's great.
First time I heard Pontoon, that song, first of all, I wrote it with Natalie Hemby and Barry Dean, but when we finished it, I mean, we were dying laughing, but I always felt like people ask, how do you know when you wrote a hit? I'm like, well, I never, you don't know. I mean, when you get to this point or you have a publishing deal, every day you write songs, you think, I could hear somebody recording that. Mm-hmm. But when we wrote that, I was like, it's definitely a little different, but I'm like, I really felt deep down that if it had a chance, it would at least, I mean, I knew it'd be kind of polarizing as far as just kind of quirky and stuff, but I'm like, the reaction I get when I play it for people, whether it's laughing or just like they don't see it coming, I'm like, if it can just get high enough on the chart, I think it's got a chance. Yeah. And then when Jay Joyce produced it, he's such an incredible producer. He leans into that kind of just enough of left to center, but it was still kept it very commercial. And Jay called me and had me come play, because the demo for that song was literally 2 Telecaster tracks, like a simple drum loop and incredible Natalie Hemby vocal. But he had me come play my Telecaster, just the part that I played. I mean, just the rhythm part. And I went into the studio over at Sound Emporium, and the band had been rehearsing. And I went in, he goes, okay, just go in there and sit down at my guitar station, and here's the headphones. And I put it on, and they counted the band off, and I started playing. And I mean, the mix was dialed in. I was like, oh my gosh, this is does not sound like anything in like such a great way. And I left the studio just like, I called Barry and Natalie. I'm like, I don't know if it's a hit, but if this thing comes out, it's going to stand out, because and I'll never forget, I was driving into Music Row, and I was on Granny White at that little park over there in 12 South. I literally had to pull over just to take it all in, because like, this is amazing. Yeah. Oh my God.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. What a great story. Well, I think, what I'm picking up on from your story, a lot of it is like these weird moments where, or not weird moments, but like specific moments where it's like we don't have a lot of control as songwriters, but yet every time you've sort of exerted more control in your career, like it's sort of like been a real asset to you, right? Like starting with the tracks, and then it's like, because that is something. It's so easy to go, I made the demo, or we recorded this demo, and it's not what's in here. Yeah. It's not coming out. So like a lot of people will probably just go, it's just the way it is. Yeah. But not you. You're going like, all right, well, what can I do? So then, you start doing your own thing, and that makes it really special, right? Yeah. And that kind of helps it cut through. And then like, same thing, like Pontoon. What an incredible song. And it's like, obviously, not everybody gets the opportunity to go get get to play the guitar on the recording, but it was because you made the demo.
Yeah.
It was such a thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just wanted to highlight that because I think it's really special and really interesting, and I think it's very inspiring.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's the control thing is can be rough on a creative, you know.
Yeah, but now you've got. I mean, do you think that had something to do with you kind of starting your own thing with Creative Nation?
Yeah, you know, that. You know, if I wasn't married to Beth, I mean, Creative Nation would have never have happened. I'd just be trying to get a publishing deal somewhere else.
Yeah.
But we were at a point, both of us in our careers, you know, I'd been at Universal for 10 years. She had worked at a couple different publishing companies and then had been at BMI for 5 years. And we were just at that point, like, you know, what's next, or where do we want to see our careers go? And what she does and what I do is it's such a compliment to each other because she's so good with creatives and she's great business sense, which I don't. But we're like, what happened was I sold my first catalog, and we're like, let's just bet on ourselves.
Yeah.
Start a little company. I'm like, worst case, 5 years, we lost some money, and I think we're both at a place where we could still get jobs.
Yeah.
I could maybe get a spot writing somewhere, and you're so smart, you could work anywhere. And so we just kind of went for it, and we really wanted to have, you know, a company where we could sign in talent that we truly believed in, and I had a unique perspective as coming up from a songwriter's point of view. I never wanted people to feel like whoever we signed, I didn't want to do bad business, but I never would want someone to leave feeling like, man, we really got screwed, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm always kind of looking out for that. And she feels the same way, but I can see it as a new writer coming in. What are things I would have wanted to know, or how would I have wanted to be treated? And I was treated great by a lot of the people at the publishing companies, but so it was really, and it is creative because you really get to curate, you know, the types of writers you want to attract. And we've been extremely blessed with, you know, the writers we've had. Everybody that we've signed, it's like they write songs that I wished I could write songs like.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome.
I mean, there's just so much talent in this town. Like,
yeah.
So it's inspiring to me.
Do you have any tips on being in business with your life partner?
My life partner, be talented.
No, I mean, because like
you mean me being like, are you doing the same thing?
Me and my wife do a lot of like, you see this podcast, you think it's me.
Yeah.
But it's really me, and it's Ben, and it's my wife. You know, behind the scenes, it like, you know, like it. Sometimes you get home from work, and you know you're hanging with your wife, and then you're eating dinner, and then it's like, okay, now we got to talk business, you know?
Yeah.
And those lines get, so it's, so I'm always curious. Like, I don't know that I've ever taught anyone that.
I mean, just start having kids. You'll be good.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. You know, I think one thing, I don't know. Is your wife a songwriter?
No, she's an attorney. So different.
I do think that's good. I mean, I've seen obviously writing couples make it, but I think one thing that's helpful is even though we work together, like our day to day is like, we're so separate, like as far as like, you still come home, like, how was your day? Like, we're not sitting in the same room all day, which
I see. Yeah.
I love hanging out with my wife, but I feel like that could be rough, you know, every day.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if I have any good advice. We like, we'll sit there and we're like, oh, we're talking about business again, but we enjoy it so much, you know?
Dude, it's
and I think if you're enjoying it, that's okay. You know, if it's causing tons of friction, then that might be time to reconsider
No, we're like, we just went to Japan.
Nice.
And we're like, I just remember we like land in Japan, and I'm like, all right, I know I know we shouldn't, but like, we got to talk about this podcast for a second, you know?
Yeah.
And then for the next 3 hours, we're just talking about it, but we love it. You know, I mean, it's so much fun. And, you know, when you love something and you get to do it with somebody that's special to you, like, I don't know. I think a lot of people would be like, don't do it.
Well, no, a lot of people did tell us that. Yeah. And I understand the concern and why, but, you know, for us, it's been amazing and awesome. And we get each other. So she understands songwriters. Mm-hmm. And yeah, we know each other's, you know, the business that we're in. So it's not like, if I came over every day to somebody who doesn't work in this business or something, it might be kind of hard to explain a few things. Yeah. But no, I don't have great advice. I'm sorry, but I'm.
No, just talking about it is good. It's it's nice to know, like, I'm not completely insane. No, somebody else is not crazy, you know?
No, that's awesome. That's cool. You guys do that.
Yeah. I'm trying to think like a more specific question, like somebody's just moving to town, but like, I think a lot of people struggle with the, like, okay, I'm writing. What can I do? What can someone do that's like, maybe they're, you know, already feel like they're writing great songs, but just how do you get, you know, to the next part? Like, what, do you remember anything along the way that sort of?
I'm trying to think. It can be frustrating when you feel like you're writing really good songs. Maybe it's not happening. I've had kind of this, you know, I guess for me, I just don't ever want to get to a place where like I'm become bitter or start being the guy that's like, everything new stinks and all that. And I think one way I've protected myself from that, because the reality is I'm very grateful. I mean, I don't want to sound ungrateful, but I'm not having like the hits I was like 10 years ago, but I feel like I'm writing really good songs, stuff I'm proud of. And so much of it is, what is your schedule like day to day? And sometimes just writing another song isn't the best thing to do. So if I look at my calendar, and this hasn't happened in a long time, but I would look at it and it'd be like, you're kind of like, oh, why am I doing that? Or
yeah, absolutely.
And that can happen. You know, publishers, there's some really great publishers, but then sometimes it's just, they're just trying to fill days, and it's not always what's best for each writer. Some writers only need to be writing 3 days a week.
Yeah.
Some writers might only need to be having 2 co-writes and then have 2 days to write by themselves. And if you don't take into consideration as a publisher how each one of your writers operates, it can burn them out really quickly. And so for me, when I look at my schedule, 98% of the time it's like, I'm excited. And that immediately, even if I don't have an idea that day, I'm excited because I'm like, something could happen. But when you walk into a room and you're already like, oh, should I cancel? Or I really, really hope they cancel. That's not good. Like, you start stacking those up back to back. It's just, you can't expect a quality product to come out of that.
Yeah.
So that didn't really answer the question, is like, what if it's not moving as fast as you thought it would? No. I think, you know, at the end of the day, it's like, there's no guarantees in this business. And if you think about, I doubt any of us got into it because it's like, oh, we're going to make a lot of money doing this. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't expect things. But I also think it's very important to remember, if you're getting to do it and getting paid, even if it's a little amount, should be very grateful, because there's so many people who maybe haven't got that first pub deal yet, or haven't had any cuts. But I think if you're enjoying it and you have the talent, you obviously have the talent if somebody has believed in you in this town. And now I'm speaking more to like signed writers, but you know, I think it's important to get get with people, make sure people are really honest with you, and be honest with yourself. I mean, I early on would turn in these demos, I think these are really good, but then if I stacked it up against Craig Wiseman songs, I'm like, there's like 2 songs of his that I just heard that is like nothing I've written, and I can tell he's kind of ahead of the curve. Mm-hmm. I need to dig in a little more and try to find something that's going to make, I kind of go back to that. If you have one song, if you have an opportunity to have a one song on a playlist of 10 songs that's getting to pitch to somebody, what's going to make this song I'm not even talking about just better, but what is going to make this thing stand out, get somebody's attention. And a lot of times it's a better song and everything, but sometimes there's just quirky little things that you can do in demos that'll get the attention, because the best you can hope for is that an artist would actually hear it. Yeah. And then they can say no, but you're just trying to break through all these little doors, and what's going to make you stand out. And it's not just regurgitating another song that sounds like that it could have been a Morgan Wallen cut, because he's already doing that. So like,
yeah, you got to find the next.
I'm speaking to myself now. I'm always like, what's next? Okay.
Well, I feel like you've always, to me, your stuff has always been pushing the envelope, which is really cool. And it's like, I don't know. Did you mean to?
I just try not to bore myself to death.
Yeah.
I'll do things like when I make tracks, I don't make tracks thinking, okay, let's see. I think if I do these things, it'll sound like the radio. I'm like, I want to do something that nobody's ever heard. And that can keep it from getting cut. But if the right person hears it, it could be the next thing. Yeah. So like a good example, and I'm not saying like, oh, I broke any ground. This not saying that at all. But like when I did the song with Sam Hunt, Hard to Forget, I got with Sam, and we worked on a few different songs that sounded cool. Like I'm like, well, if he likes it, this could be a hit. But he, as an artist too, is looking for what's next. So I'd made this track. I sampled this song from 1953, the Webb Pierce song, and I didn't do that thinking, you know what, I'm going to make this and play it for Sam Hunt. I was literally like, this is just fun for me to do, and I've got tons of tracks like that I'm realistic. Don't think like, hey, this is going to work for Dustin Lynch or whoever, to put on the radio, but the way this makes me feel, I'm so excited right now. And so I want that feeling, and not like, I think this sounds like it. Like, no, this is so different that I at least want to play it for people. Yeah. And I feel like I don't do that enough, but when I have done that, usually good things have happened, or it's at least spurred me onto something else. I want to be excited. I don't want to hear the intro or first line and know, I already know exactly where this song's going. Yeah. Like, it just got to shift gears.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting.